peace and love, how come it always starts, we always start this thing with you hitting me?
Well, today's episode's about pain. So I thought we have to inflict pain.
Very good. There was a question regarding pain and still trying to do your Kung Fu training through someone. And so we thought we would address that, because what happens is sometimes we don't know our limitations. And but as Kung Fu practitioners, you don't want to
be wimpy.
I was going to say, don't be a wimpy. You want to still train. So then how do you know what to do? That is the question.
Yes. So as always, I am here also logged in. So if you do have questions or comments, please do type into the box. Let us know you're here. Wave, shout, I don't know, exist. But it does help when you guys ask questions and help keep the ball rolling. So we did have that question, like Oscar said, about, we kind of kid in Kung Fu class, like no pain, no gain. And, pain is weakness leaving the body and all these crazy things, right? But ultimately, our main goal for you guys is never to actually get injured. We've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. And as we age, we also like to make sure we're very conscious of staying injury-free, but also while you're in the zone, knowing the difference between, oh, this is painful because I didn't get to class for a week, or oh, I can't do a full split, so I feel the stretching, and then snap, ow, like that kind of was wrong, that feels really bad, but I'm going to keep pushing through it anyway. So we're going to kind of address those two different scenarios, and that was one of the questions that we had.
Right. So I think it's important to mention the difference between stressing your body and pushing through pain. So I would say, let's just define pain overall as not good, and also pain as something that is not normal. So you should not be walking around and feeling pain. But how can we define it, right? For someone who is really deconditioned, being a little bit sore, like delayed onset muscle soreness, that's not too extreme, can be normal. Like you can be a little bit sore from a workout, and that's what we call like the next day after a training session. It's like, well, I kind of feel it. I feel a little bit of maybe stiffness through the muscles, and
like your body is just waking up and kind of places you've never activated before, right, kind of are alert now. And
then pain, though, I would consider that as something that's like sharp or maybe dull or aching, mm-hmm, and that maybe throbbing. All these things are not normal, especially if you're doing something like, let take out the Kung Fu part. Let's say you're just waking up and walking around and saying, oh, my back always hurts every time I walk around. My knee always hurts. My shoulder. That's the challenge, or what I would caution against, is normalizing that and saying that is your normal. That shouldn't be your normal. And then you're kind of pushing through that. Because we are made to be functioning pain-free. And pain is really what it is a signal going to our brain, letting us know that something is wrong. So what happens a lot of times is we are getting that input over and over again, and we normalize it and we say, this is just how I am.
Right.
And then you go into Kung Fu and you start feeling a little bit more, and you say, well, my knee always hurts, so of course it's going to hurt while I'm doing this. And that again is not normal. And you as a martial arts practitioner or someone who's turning 40 and over, you're going to get general like body issues, things that you're more aware of, like, wow, my ankle hurts a little bit more, or I feel a little bit more than I used to. But you have to realize that pain is not normal. And so how can we address that? I mean, what's I guess the next...
Well, I was also just typing in here for those of you who want to know, like, we are going to cover a lot of it here, but this is something I remember we did cover in our 1 hour extended podcast. So I was just typing the link.
Oh, we did?
Yes, we definitely did, because it sounds all very familiar now. So that means that listener, didn't pay attention to that podcast. So it's okay. We'll repeat it for you guys. Well, I think there was two facets. So one is normalizing pain, kind of what you just talked about, and not having that normal. But then the difference between, I think you should break down for people, joint pain and muscle pain, like how those two things are different and why one is okay and why one is definitely not okay.
Yeah.
So in our joints, like you can describe them more as like elbow,
Yeah,
knee,
so joints, I mean,
ankle.
joints are, think of it, let's go from top down, right? Just broadly speaking, we can think about our neck as part of our spine, our full spine, our shoulders, our elbows, our wrists, even there's a lot of joints in our fingers, of course, but the main ones that I want you to think about are your spine, full spine, shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, ankles, and toes. And so if there's pain in any of those areas, then that could be an issue. However, I am going to sound like a broken record, but if you take your joints through a full range of motion every single day, then as I've mentioned before, not only will it keep the joint healthy because you are feeding synovial fluid into the joint, you are putting input and force into the joint and letting it know that you want it to start moving in the right direction, but also if you do it, it is an excellent assessment, because if one day you wake up and you're able to do this, and the next day you wake up and you're like, ow, what a great assessment to realize that's not normal, and then you can start thinking about how to get to move better. So again, I've mentioned and talked about taking your joints through the full range of motion all the time, and so another great reason to do it is not just to keep the joints healthy, but also as a great assessment tool for you to realize that there's something wrong.
You can tell them about greasing the groove.
And greasing the groove is, again, another term of doing something at a moderate to low intensity throughout the day. And so you're developing like neural pathways, and you're learning, you're practicing it almost as a skill acquisition as opposed to an intense training exercise. And that then allows you to move better over time. Muscles obviously are the things in between the joints, I guess you could speak broadly speaking. And sometimes, especially with Kung Fu, we get our butt muscle, your glutes, you get your quads to get pretty sore, your calves from jumping. Yesterday we were doing some of the bigger weapons, and so I woke up and I was like, oh, I kind of feel that my shoulders and my triceps and my upper back were a little bit sore. Right. But the difference being like, oh, because I use certain muscles that I haven't been doing as often, as opposed to waking up and not being able to lift my arm. That would be bad.
And so for Kung Fu practitioners, especially those of you who are just starting out, especially particularly in Wah Lum, we kind of like ramp you up, but at the same time, you know, that first day or first week, you're doing all these motions that even if you're a weightlifter or do cross training, the only ones I would say that really cross over really well are like serious dance and gymnasts, but usually you're waking up and moving muscles and arms and ankles and doing things that you're not really used to doing. So you are going to feel some awakening. And that's normal.
The awakening.
The awakening.
You
will feel different things that you're used to feeling, and as you progress, even if it's your third month, you're like, oh, you know, suddenly now you're working on 16 hands, and we're even stomping a little more. We're doing other things that maybe your body hasn't been acclimated to, and so you don't get alarmed. But again, what he said at the beginning, throbbing, sharp, dull, like consistent pain is not what we want, right? But if you're waking up your muscles, you're waking up your body, and you're feeling something, and range of motion isn't affected, so to speak, that's a big indicator that, you know, where the different pathways lie.
Right. If normally you're walking like this, and the next day you're walking like this,
or like this,
that could be a sign that something went wrong. Yeah, but taking your joints through the full range of motion, and then maybe another good way to think about it is changing your mindset of pain just being information. It's information that your body is sending you, and you can take that information and process it different ways. You can either go, "Damn you, world!
Cruel world!
Why me?" Right? And those people will be there and kind of give them a thumbs up, but deep down be like, man, what a complainer. Nobody likes complainers. Or the other option could be saying, wow, let me think about this. What did I do to cause this issue that I have? Did I move incorrectly? Did I sleep the wrong way? Did I push myself too hard during class? Have I been sitting all day, and now I'm going to get up and try to do something, and I didn't prepare my tissues adequately? So instead of like naming like, it's my subclavicle blah 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 joint, you could say this stuff here doesn't work well. Assessment wise, try to take your joints through their full range of motion, and then start going through like Sherlock Holmes style, step by step, and saying, what could you have done to cause these issues?
And actually, I really like how you framed that in pain being information, and I'm very grateful for information because I like to do things with information and like analyze, but you don't want to take it to like the extreme. But actually, if you're a little bit grateful that, not that you have pain, but for example, the other day I was like, oh, my knee is a little tweaky. How many of you have said that before? All of you, I'm sure, right? If you stepped up the stairs wrong, or went down the stairs wrong, or stepped off a curb, or did 200 kicks in class last night, or whatever, or doing barefoot style for 15 minutes, right? Like, it'll feel tweaky, but I'm actually really grateful because that reminds me, okay, I need to do my cars, I need to do my joint mobility, I need to kind of address this. I don't freak out about it and go, oh my God, that's it. I'll be out for weeks. It's it's over.
You still flip tables.
Yeah, sometimes I flip tables just for effect. But pretty much, I'm really grateful that I have that information, that my body's telling me something. So once I start to do those adjustments, then I realize, oh, it feels so much better. That prevented me from really getting injured, right? So what it did was tell me, oh wait, hold up. You may need to warm up a little bit longer. You may need to address some things, but what I'm actually happy for is getting that information or pain information so that then I can make sure that I don't really get injured. So the first signs of it, you don't want to be a hypochondriac about it and be like, oh my gosh, that's it, But at the same time, take it for what it is, as information, and then do with that information what you feel will be necessary, the next step.
And then on the other end of the spectrum is totally ignoring that and pushing through. And we all know what happened to the one gentleman who was bleeding and said, I ain't got time to bleed. He ended up with a huge hole in his chest when the predator shot him through the chest. So you don't want to end up like this dude, okay?
We all know. We all know what happened.
We all know what happened to that guy, right? So if you're 40 years old, you should.
Yeah, if you're on this, joining us now because of the content,
and
then
you said, I ain't got time to bleed, right? There was something else I was going to say, but I had to get my Predator reference in. And that is, so we take information, right? But then this also reinforces why it's super important that when you're practicing your Kung Fu, you're thinking of practicing it as a skill. And instead of, use the example of 200 kicks, instead of thinking, I've got to do 200.
Which we did do last night, by the way, advanced class. Good job for those of you who were there.
I would reframe it from doing 200 kicks to I'm going to do one perfect kick 200 times. And once you break what you think of as good quality, as your best quality rep, then you should start slowing down or maybe skipping, like using the examples of kicks. So it just reinforces the importance of trying to move with intention, to think about what you're doing. And obviously when you first start practicing Kung Fu, you're like oblivious, right? You're just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Is this it? Is this what you're doing?
That's what you looked like when you first started.
When I first started, I saw people doing Kung Fu and it looked amazing. And then I probably looked like this. Just like, that's probably what I looked like. But not even as funny. It was just probably sad. Probably very sad. But over time and with a lot of experience, I take my Kung Fu practice and think, wow, every single move, how could I think of doing this as well as I can? And so for me, what that entails is a lot of the time slowing down a little bit and thinking about the movement. Speed should be the last thing that comes into the equation.
Always.
And always. So I think a lot of injuries happen from not thinking about it, trying to go too fast, maybe trying to keep up with other people who are more advanced.
Or being really fatigued and not listening to the information that your body's giving you of like, okay, and then pushing through, and then that's when you could possibly injure yourself as well. So again, use your body as indicators telling you like all this information and listen to it.
I would say, listen. And we could do a whole other, podcast just on sleep. But your comment there kind of reminded me that a lot of us, especially when we're at this age and we're kind of like really at kind of trying to peaking almost in careers and busy with family and everything, that we ignore sleep. And sleep is really like the great recharger. Think of it as your recovery. You're not resting, you're recovering, you're recharging your battery. And if you keep going and pushing and not getting adequate sleep, a lot of injuries happen from something just like that. Which means every single night you should be watching the 40 Fit Fu, Facebook Live and just keep rewatching it. But at a certain time, you got to shut it off.
That's right.
And then prepare and start going to sleep and think about getting your rest.
How about when you get injured sleeping? Like, it's really crazy. I hardly ever get injured doing Kung Fu, but I'll wake up and then my neck is like twisted. And then I'll go, oh, crook neck.
Yeah. Well, I obviously that can happen. But here's what I sometimes think is like sometimes our bad sleep postures happen after maybe poor eating and being overtired and not maybe taking the proper steps to get to rest. And then all these things accumulate and then all of a sudden you wake up with a jacked up neck.
Right.
Good sleep kind of starts in the morning. When you wake up, you start prepping for sleep that night. You try to get some sunshine, try to move the joints, you try to eat the right things.
Right.
So we can go into a whole segue, a whole big thing on the sleep part.
Tangent.
But a whole tangent. Hashtag, I won't say it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Go on.
Okay, so the last few things I'll say about pain is, let's say that you've gotten injured. One of the best things you can do is to continue moving pain-free range of motion. Because you only see my upper body, I always use my arms as an example. But let's say that you hurt your shoulder. Let's say you hurt your shoulder, and the night before you were able to do this, then you hurt your shoulder and you can't do that. And what hurt your shoulder was doing something like this really fast. Well, what I would recommend is to try to replicate that movement slowly up to the point right before pain. So if this hurts, raising my arm, I would do this right before that range of motion. I hope that makes sense. Right before I hit that pain point.
You always like to say, get close and up and personal with pain.
Become friends with pain.
Friends.
Pain is here. Stay in the friend zone. Don't get intimate with pain. Right. Stay in the friend zone. The friend zone with pain.
40 references, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
What else can we talk about?
So basically, to sum up, it's just kind of listening to what your body tells you.
Yes. Listening to what your body tells you and what your wife tells you. Those are two very important, valuable
And your
points.
Sifu. So if your Sifu notices that you are doing Luigi Ma a little bit off, and you're trying to make all adjustments, and they're like, yeah, you need to just stop, then you need to just stop. And it's okay, right? It's okay.
Right.
Or knowing that you have a big event coming up, or, shows or tournaments or performances, like sometimes you have to kind of, adjust, right? But we do want you to work absolutely as hard as you can, every single class, but definitely listen to your body and, don't be too sensitive, like, oh my gosh, I think I felt something. Yeah, that could just be, you being warmed up and you're ready to go now. So we don't want you to be hypochondriacs, but we also want you to be able to listen to your body and know the difference between what I call good pain and bad pain. Like good pain is when you've got a knot and you're rubbing it out and all of a sudden you got movement again, but it kind of hurts to get through that. And so the same way that we're working out, sometimes there's a little bit of discomfort, in order to get into a position or to get a little bit extra stretch. It's not going to necessarily be the most pleasant thing, but I call it the good pain. So stick with the good pain.
And to reiterate something that I've said probably 20 times already, is that
we're not doctors.
Well, okay, one, we're not doctors, and if you got issues, go see a doctor. But two is that most injuries happen because your tissues are taking more stress and more force than they're capable of withstanding. So if you think of that broadly, to your point of like good pain and bad pain, or stress, is that you do need stress for the tissue to adapt, right? And that stress, as long as it's not more than what your tissues can handle, is not really pain. It's just the appropriate stress to adapt the tissue. When that stress or that force is more than what your tissues can handle, that's where an injury happens.
Right.
And sometimes we can see it as instructors say, okay, you're doing something incorrectly, and sometimes we can't, right? And so this is why it's important for, if you're doing martial arts, that you have a kind of like this really great team effort with the instructors, the Sifus, and the student, where you're both listening to each other. But most important is that you listen to yourself.
Yeah. And again, be friends with pain, but don't become intimate with pain.
Yes, and I think, is that Alexia is watching?
And Christine.
I think Alexia would appreciate, we were talking about doing videos, and I'm using different finger techniques. Does this look professional?
This looks like you're doing founder breathing.
Okay. I'm just trying to experiment with different things to do with my hands.
Okay.
Okay.
As you all know who join us every week, you know what time it is. It's almost dinner time, and Oscar tends to get a little bit distracted for dinner time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So no questions today. So everybody's pain-free. That's awesome. So glad to see that you guys are all pain-free. Nobody ever feels pain. We're all good. So, but yeah, definitely I'd say just, listen to your body, kind of play it safe when you're not quite sure, but also push through things that are just kind of your body waking up and muscles that, you haven't used before. It's going to be okay. Don't freak out. But to the intimacy thing, back to that, if you are injured, I did want to say, say you sprained your wrist or cut your finger, the rest of this still works, and so you should still use it.
And even if your whole body was in a full cast, you can visualize.
And do breathing.
Yeah.
There's always something you can do. So if you didn't listen to your body, you ended up having pain, you pushed through, now you're injured, there's probably still something you guys can be doing. So.
2 great blog posts on the Control Your Health website, which is Injury as an Opportunity, which is, I've got injured, all right, I lost my arm because someone swung a Kwon Do too hard. Now I am, 1, I'm super cool, I'll be the armless monk, but number 2, what is the opportunity that I have to work on? Now I can work on strengthening my legs, maybe work on my mobility, maybe work on my breathing and my mindset thing. Right. So I think we kind of go into that in that blog post, Injury as an Opportunity.
I will link those here for you as well.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're great.
Right. Thank you guys for joining us in 45th Fu. The holidays are coming up, and the Tuesday time is falling on a couple holiday dates, but we are planning and committing, we're planning to pre-record something that we think will be important during the holidays for you to do, and so we will still post it at 7:30 so that you don't miss us too much.
Yeah. You're gonna miss us, right? And this is something now where you need to get your mindset ready. Just don't miss us too much. Yeah, I think that's important.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. See you next week.
All right.
Bye.